International Women's Day has been celebrated since 1911. Okay, it's a long time. Yes, one or two of you look a bit surprised in the audience. It's been celebrated for a very long time, right? And this day is marked each year to honor women's achievements and raise awareness of equality, okay, the equality of women. This year's theme, and there's always a theme, this year's theme is Accelerate Action, okay? And we're going to play with that over the course of the presentations and the questions, okay? Accelerate Action is a call for urgency, for inclusion, and for transformative change, which is much needed, because it signals that we cannot wait, we really must not wait, for change to be provided for us, okay? It's incumbent on all of us to work together in order to bring about change and make things sure that things happen at some pace. Because if we wait for change to take place, it could take a really long time. And there are some statistics around that, which I'm not going to quote in case I get them wrong. But there's lots of statistics that say that if we let it happen in its own time, I think it'll be 2158 before we see equality between men and women. Okay, right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am somebody I wasn't born in Blackburn, but I grew up in Blackburn. I spent my whole childhood here. I am the daughter of immigrants who came here because my dad was working in a factory. He was a cotton weaver. My mum was a homemaker. And I am very familiar with Blackburn because it was all I ever really knew, to be perfectly honest, until I was about 19 years old. Okay, I'd been to other places, but they were for very short visits. So my world was all of this in and around here, right? That was all of it, including my family. Clearly, I'm an Asian female. I'm Muslim. I'm also a sister. I am a wife. I am a mother, stepmother. I'm a step-grandmother. Glam mother, in my case, obviously. So I am all of those things. And I tell you this because we all wear many hats, right? And women in particular wear many hats, as I'm sure many of you do as well, right? And we're always busy stepping into those spaces where we're required to play our part, okay? And we do it without even thinking about it. It becomes second nature, and we step from one into the other, right? But I'm asking you today to just take a couple of minutes to think about why we're here. Right. I've worked all of my adult life, so this is a little bit about my work life. I've worked all of my adult life with no break. And I spend my day job, as I call it, working with organizations and with people, thinking about organizational development. So it's all about innovation, creativity, persuading people, influencing people to make change happen so organizations can be better than what they are now. Okay? And that comes with loads of benefits, right? I love what I do for a living, but it also presents challenges because sometimes when people realize the effort that change takes, they get a little cautious. So, the appetite is there, but sometimes things spring up that get in the way of that. Okay? And we're going to explore that a little bit further down the line. What I also want to tell you is that up until about 5 years ago, all of my work was pretty much in like a corporate environment and in with large organizations in the public sector, the wider public sector, so local authorities, civil service, large national charities, things like that. And then to my good fortune, I was asked to do a piece of work with a woman who was then chief executive of Liverpool Biennial, right? And I was absolutely made up. Right, absolutely made up because I did my A-levels, when some of you may remember St. Mary's College on Shearbrow. I did my A-levels there, one of which was art. And I was absolutely determined to go to university and do art and English. And that didn't happen. But for whole of my life, I've been really interested in art and craft and the influence of that on our built environment, the spaces we occupy in our homes, in our professional lives, and the effect of that on our mental health and well-being, and how it shapes who we are and what we do. Okay. Now, I firmly believe, right, that the value of art and craft is under-realized, right, because people think it's something that's nice to do, right. So I'm absolutely thrilled that I'm here with these three women today. right? Because over the last 5 years, since I did the work at Liverpool Biennial, again, I've had the real honour of meeting people in the arts sector, because the work at Liverpool Biennial took me into doing some work with New Contemporaries, which is a large national charity that works with artists up and down the country. That took me, an introduction from one of the board members there, took me to the Middlesbrough Institute of Modern Art. And that has now taken me to become the chair of a visual arts charity, the chair of the board of a visual arts charity based in Newham in London. So for somebody who felt like she'd left art behind, it's suddenly become a really big part of sort of what I do and how I do it and the people that I get to meet. So I was asked to, I'm going to stop there about myself, but I'm going to hand you over to the panel, and they're going to all introduce themselves and the work that they have done, okay, their achievements, and some of their work. You're going to see that on the screens in a second. But before I do that, I wanted to just say something that struck me as both curious and really fascinating, because up until a couple of weeks ago, I hadn't met any of these women, right? And there's two things in our meeting. I've been on panels, I've been at events, I've been the speaker, I regularly facilitate workshops. This is the first time, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but it's the first time in the whole of my adult life working where I actually have the honor of being on a panel that is made up of Asian women, pure and simple, okay? I remember an occasion when I first started out where I went to an event, a conference, and I was in the loos washing my hands, and this woman next to me said, "Oh, it's so good to see you here." And I went, "Oh, okay." I said, "Do we know one another?" Because I thought, I can't remember who she is. And she said, "No, we don't, but we don't often get an Asian woman come to one of these. We don't get Asian people. So it's really good to see you here." And when I went back into the conference room, I suddenly became really aware that I was actually one of the very few Asian people there. And I thought, oh my goodness. So to be sat here now with a panel of 3 really distinguished Asian women is, a real sort of a thing in my life, right? And I will remember this occasion till the day I die, right? Not to be dramatic or anything. Okay? and the thing that struck me about these 3 women as I spoke to them, because we did a bit of a getting to know you, the thing that really struck me was when we talked about them and their work, the underlying theme that I got was about the power of their relationships that fuel their action in terms of their professional practice, right? So when I spoke with Dawinder, she told me about the connection she feels with her family and the environment that her mum and dad created for her formative experiences that has fueled and shaped her work. Okay? When I spoke with Nehal, she told me about her relationship with her mum. And she spoke about how her mum and her have actually, created, sort of mapped their professional development as artists in parallel with one another. And how she's really, benefited from that experience and continues to benefit. And when I spoke with Zara, she told me about her relationship with her granddad, who came here to make a better life for himself and his family, and his support and the strength of that support that's really fueled everything she's been able to achieve. So I just wanted to make that connection between relationship, us with you with one another, me with them, hopefully the makings of some beautiful relationships to come. And how that can fuel. We may not think we can do it individually on our own, but together we can make change happen. So on that note, let me pass you over to Dawinder.
Oh, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Thank you. It's the first time using one of these microphones. It feels very, very bizarre. Right, hello, everyone. My name is Dawinder Bansal. I'm an artist and a producer, but I wasn't always an artist and a producer. I've got a background in computer science, which was the sensible thing to do by my family when they said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I just said, I don't know. And they just said, well, why don't you go into computing? So I did computer science at university by suggestion of my older brother. And I suppose a lot of my work is about my heritage and my identity as being British, being Asian, being Kenyan. So this is a picture of my parents on their wedding day, 1950s, and although they're not smiling, they are very happy. And they went from India to Kenya, and then from there came to the UK in the 1960s when Kenya received its independence, and actually arrived in Wolverhampton as the speeches of the Rivers of Blood was happening. And so, yeah, they were made to feel very welcome. And then I was born, and I'm the youngest of 4 siblings. And after I did computer science degree, I realised I didn't want to do that as a career. And then I started volunteering at a radio station, and then found myself at a theatre company and realised that storytelling was where I wanted to be. Mainly because I grew up inside my parents' VHS Bollywood rental shop in the 1980s. And I got to watch a lot of films, and I got to do a lot of pirate copying at the same time. Because everyone knows that those shops used to have those under the counter copies. And so I decided I wanted to tell my own story because I was questioning my identity. And then I decided I was going to do something, and I wasn't an artist. And I just said, I've got this burning desire to tell the story of my late father because he'd passed away in 1988. We kept all of his stock from the shop because my mum said we're not throwing any of this away because we spent money on it. And so this is the first thing I created, and it's a recreation of my parents' 1980s Indian Kenyan living room, because I thought, actually, where can I start with telling the story? And every single person has a living room, and they have things that happen in that living room. And actually, this was a tribute to my mum as well as my dad about the comforting environment they created, which had a lot of red. And as time went on, I also recreated the video rental shop as well, with all of the original stock and the fixtures and the fittings. And this was inside a retail unit in Wolverhampton as part of the British Art Show. And then I created this as part of the Commonwealth Games. So as you can see, as time went on, I managed to have a bit more investment towards the work. And this was at the Commonwealth Games, where I also created my teenage bedroom of the 1980s, complete with Bros posters and Michael Hutchins and Jason Donovan and all of those types of people who I used to really fancy. Not allowed to fancy, but yeah, they were up there anyway. And then I started doing a project thinking about women and cars, because I spoke to, and this is about where the threads of storytelling come from. I started speaking to one of my aunts about my late father, because I was 11 years old when he passed away and I didn't really know much about him. So I started doing the research, and then she said to me, if I didn't have my car, I wouldn't have been able to keep this house. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, after your father passed away, you have to realise that when one person passes away, there is a massive impact on the rest of the family. And as a result of that, your uncle became an alcoholic, and he was pretending to go out to work, wasn't working, and we got a repossession letter, and I had to do something. And she said my car enabled me to go and take on 2 or 3 different jobs, not tell the family, not tell the community, because it was something to be ashamed of at that time. And then I started to think about that as a story. What are the other women out there, and the Asian women, who have a similar kind of story of resilience and strength, but struggle at the same time? And so I started to look through my family photo album and found pictures of many men, like this picture of my cousin in front of his car. And this is my brother's in front of my dad's car. And then this is like a record album. One of my cousins was in a 1980s Bhangra band. And this is a picture that they had taken in front of a car as part of the photo album, the vinyl. And then this is my mom in front of, she's not really posing with the car, but she's sort of posing with the house that's next to the car. But my dad's determined to get the car in the picture, as you can see. And then I started thinking, well, who are those women? And then I went out and did some research, and I got commissioned, and I found pictures of and stories of some amazing women, Asian women. This is the first generation of Asian women who learnt to drive in the UK and weren't allowed to drive, so some of them learnt in secret. And that got commissioned, and then I got featured on the BBC to talk about their stories. And I thought that was amazing, because these are women that are really invisible and they don't get the recognition about what they've done to pave the way for future generations of Asian women like me, to go out, to get a job, to be educated and really do what we want to do in life. It's because of these women that we're here actually on this stage as well. And so I found lots of interesting pictures. This is a picture that I loved, and so I decided to recreate it, and that's me. And there are lots of different projects that I do which are about real people's stories, and I think that comes back to growing up in a video shop and watching all these Bollywood films, because storytelling is very much at the heart of my work. And these are some of those Asian women, the elderly Asian women who I interviewed, who featured in my film. And Asian Women and Cars is going to be a project that is got phase 2, so it's carrying on, it's in development at the moment. But I just wanted to put this picture up there to say, yeah, these are the women who are very inspiring to me. They're sort of hidden heroes in our communities and in our families, and often dismissed. But they bring so much, speaking about my own mum, so much strength and resilience and determination, and that quiet strength that I think is within all of us actually, but it comes from them. So that's me, that's Dawinder Bansal. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. We're going to pass on to Nehal.
Thank you, Dawinder. That was lovely. Hi, everyone. My name is Nehal Aamir. I'm a ceramic artist based in Manchester. And to give you a little background about myself and who I am and where I come from. So I was born in Pakistan, and I moved with my family in 2007 for a better life, for better healthcare, and just for a better lifestyle as well. And I think my parents really wanted the best for their kids. And yeah, so my family has always been very supportive of me. And as Fatima mentioned about my mom and our self-journey together, my mom, growing up in Pakistan, couldn't really go into the arts career. There wasn't many opportunities, and there was that family pressure of, you've got to do something academic where there's, there's financial stability and sort of an income that sort of supports the family as well. So she wasn't able to do that for herself until we moved here, and she decided she's going to do what she wants to do. And from seeing that, that strong sort of figure around me, be also my mother, and it was just that I. Honestly, sorry. It was I'm so grateful that I had someone in my life where I could look up to, because growing up in the UK and moving, from a young age, where in Pakistan I was making sense of things and having friends and school, there was a routine. And then moving to the UK was I just felt really alienated. And it was, making sense of things, and even language. I mean, I spoke English in Pakistan as well, in schools as well, but it's completely different what things mean, what things are said, how to say how to say things and how to communicate. So I did really struggle sort of growing up in the UK and making sense of who I was and what I wanted to become. And having my mom there, supporting me, she's always said that do whatever you want to do, but always give you 100%. So, just those words sort of helped me to become who I am and where I am today. And, since high school, I knew I wanted to do something in the arts, because I really one subject I really enjoyed was art and design. And it was the only space where I felt comfortable, where I felt like people appreciated who I was through my work. And that gave me a lot of confidence to speak up and sort of talk about what I wanted to talk about. But I was very young then, so I was still very shy and very sort of, I felt intimidated in sort of bigger spaces. And then through doing that and then going to college and doing my foundation. And, again, I was sort of trying everything out and, finding the people as well, finding a space where, I could create things and find those connections and make friends that sort of shared similar interests. And then I went on to do a BA in London. I did a ceramic design course in Central St. Martin's, and I think that was one of the best decisions I've ever made, because in Manchester growing up, I never found a place or a community where I could talk about the things I loved, which was art, which was creating, which was making, which was being in spaces where people felt included. So for me, moving away was sort of like, it was a big step, to be honest. I did feel a bit overwhelmed, but because of that support I had in my family, I felt like I could do anything I wanted. So going to London and then being in a creative environment and seeing people from all over the world, and you felt like, wow, like I didn't feel alienated all of a sudden. I felt like I was a part of a community, and the things I can share things about my family, about my experiences, things that things that were quite personal about me as well. So being in that space gave me a lot of confidence to then create works that could talk about sort of my identity as a Muslim and as a woman living in Britain and the things I have to face, but also celebrating the positivity of being a woman, a creative woman in the industry as well. And so, yeah, and in my final project in my university, I did a project of sort of an investigation of and sort of like a reflection of my time in London, and whether that was going out with friends, what did that look like, things that limited me in terms of smoking and drinking, and how like being in those spaces sort of how I felt, and how sort of my friends sort of fasted with me as well at the same time. And it was about that openness and people willing to sort of hear your story. So I kind of wanted to sort of see how other sort of women were experiencing, immigrant women experiencing living in the place I was staying in, Finsbury Park at that time, and sort of what their stories were. So I went out and interviewed these women and their experiences, and the sort of that sort of process of them sort of opening up, and how, of like beforehand being very, very shy, and then opening up and, creating that space where they could talk about their personal lives to a stranger, really. So that project really gave me the confidence, and then I created work where I was able to sort of give them the voice through the work. And I remember during the degree show, I kind of had in mind where I thought, I don't know if this work is going to speak to people, because it was about Muslim women. And being in an art school, I wasn't sure if I was going to get many Muslim women, coming up and talking about my work, because again, I was the only South Asian in my course as well, and I didn't really meet people from the South Asian background either. But when I had the work up, and there was a lot of visual imagery and like illustrations of women and in spaces, and I had a lot of people that came to me were non-Muslim, and they talked about their families and their experience of moving to Britain from different countries. And I was so shocked, and I was so surprised that, I didn't realize that people would open up to me just through the work, just through talking about the work and the visuals, and talked about their sort of their journey in living in London as a student and as becoming, artists in professional careers as well. So after leaving uni, I didn't want to stop. I was like, I'm in that drive. When you're in academia, you have that sort of that passion, that drive, that fire, and I didn't want to stop. So and at that time when I was in uni, my mom was also studying as well. So she went to Manchester School of Art. She did her MA in design and technology, and she ended up also making works that was also ceramics. So we opened up a shared space in our garden. We thought it was a good space to start. So start small. It was something, right? A space we could share and sort of create something individually, but also come together as sort of support for one another. And yeah, so I've been sort of. Sorry, my throat's quite dry now. So yeah, so I can't. Sorry, I'm fasting as well, so that doesn't help. Yeah. So it's it's been I would say it's been a very positive journey for me, but obviously there's highs and lows in any creative sort of journey, and it's about sort of pushing yourself and believing in yourself and creating something that you're really passionate about and you really sort of want to talk about. I think if you enjoy doing what you do, people are gonna come in and they're going to listen to you, and I think the thing with art is anyone can relate to anything, you know. So I think it's sort of about creating those experiences, and it's really great to be back in Blackburn. I was commissioned to do festival making, so I was artist in residence and working with Darwin Terracotta, which was an amazing opportunity for me, and I couldn't have done it without, you know, Eleanor, Jackson, Daisy is in the audience, and Jamie Holman. People who believed in me and people who saw something in me which I didn't, because I'm very critical of myself. So it's about finding those people and finding that community, which I'm really grateful for. And these are the works that I created that went into the Blackburn Museum. It was celebrating Darwin Terracotta. It was celebrating the workforce. It was celebrating the community and the people that make the work in the factory, and it's because of them that it's running. And you know, I got to work in the factory, I got to learn the processes, I got to sort of see how they worked, but for me the most important part was celebrating those people, because they were the people, they didn't appreciate themselves, they didn't see themselves as artists, it was just a work for them as a 9-to-5 job. So it was to see them work and you know, create these incredible sort of ceramic pieces, and I felt like each part of the sort of process in the factory needed to be celebrated through the people, through what they did. And you can see each panel you can see showcases each sort of process, or from creating the molds, from cleaning the materials, from, you know, creating glazes to, at the end, transporting the pieces as well. So it was really about celebrating the people of Blackburn, the community, the labor community, and celebrating the heritage through materials as well. And I got to work with Blackburn Museum as well, and looking at their collections. Yeah, so you can see in the cabinets, I was looking at the medieval collections, and which again were given to Darwin Terracotta, again sort of looking at what these collections meant and how can they be relevant in this time as well. It was honestly it was such an intense project, and you know, a lot of blood, sweat and tears went through it, and I learned a lot. I learned how to work with people through, you know, working with industry, working with the museums, working with organizations, and I am a very different person now. Not different, but I think through learning a lot, I learned a lot about myself and how much more I wanted to work with the community. So this is the work that I did. So these are the sketches I used to draw when I was, you know, I would go into the factory, just documenting and sort of celebrating what they did, it was just a celebration of the community, so I'm gonna shut up now. I've talked a lot, but yeah, I'm really grateful that I get to be here with every one of you guys, and I get to sort of talk about who I am, because I don't really often get to do that because in my studio there is a lot of isolation, and so every time I do get the opportunity to be with people and surround myself with the community, I really do like to celebrate what I've done so far, and it's not just me, but it's because of people around me that have made this happen. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. So I'm Zara. I am from Accrington, but I work for the British Textile Biennial, and I'm also an artist, so I do assistant producing for them. What I have to say about the way I've been brought up, as Fatima said, my granddad has been a major support system for me. He came to this country working in the mills. He always said, I want you to educate, I want you to go for your dreams and work hard and do what you want to do in life. And with me, that was really good, because when I said I wanted to do art in university, it was like, my parents were like, what are you doing? No, you can't do that. That's not going to get you anywhere. So that was really kind of like a huge leap I had to kind of go for, because I officially first applied for occupational therapy, which I didn't want to do at all. And then I went through clearing, and I didn't tell my dad at this point. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a nurse and it's going to be great and it will be fine. So then I ended up doing a foundation course at UCLan, and I studied there, and I didn't tell my dad for about 3 months. So that was a bit sneaky of me. But I think he finally got to terms with it, even though he's never really supported me in that sense, but he kind of, little ways, and I think my journey from there, he's kind of helped out a little bit. So when I finished university, I got into an internship with In Situ, which has been a really good learning point for me, which was amazing to kind of get there in the art world, and that's where I met the amazing Uzma, who I work with today. But she's been a great support system for me as well, and I think everyone at BTB who I do work with, we have an amazing group of women that we work with who are always supportive and great. So yeah, when I finished university, I was like, when I had that internship, I was just lucky to get in there and make connections. And I do have to thank one of my tutors, William Titley, who's one of the co-founders of that organisation, because I think without him, I wouldn't have had my step through that door. But when I did start working in the arts, I was helping artists instead of being an artist myself. So I was helping artists with the production side of stuff. So I was seen in a different way, but I always looked at it as a way of how I would want someone to help me as an artist. And I think that's really important. You have to be that support for an artist. So my work kind of had a bit of kind of stayed back because I didn't really do much of it. So what I eventually did last year, there was an opportunity to go to Pakistan and do a residency with Art of Small Talk and In Situ along with the British Council. And I thought, okay, maybe this is my chance. Shall I just go for it and start the work that I want to do? And I did, and I thought, right, let me just put that application in. And I went with an amazing person called Jamie Holman, who I wouldn't have been able to do half of the stuff that I've done if I didn't have his support. So I always have to say thank you to him. But that journey was a really difficult journey to begin with, because I wanted to look into relationships with women and how women are treated. So in Pakistan, there's this whole taboo that women don't really do stuff. They're restricted with what they have to do. They can't go out at a certain time. They aren't business owners. And this was my knowledge of it as I've been brought up in Accrington. So my dad was always like, when I wanted to ride a motorbike, he was like, no chance of you riding a motorbike. Women don't do that. Our women don't do that. And it was always a kind of thing in my head, like, why don't we do that? So as a rebellious thing, I did nick his tyres and make artwork about it. But yeah, that's another story. So when I went to Pakistan, I had to go through a lot of loops trying to work with a group of women that I wanted to. And these women were from a little village in Islamabad called Chira. And they're not from the capital, they're from the outskirts. And at first I was struggling a little bit because I thought in Islamabad everyone speaks Urdu. I don't speak Urdu, I speak Batwari, which is a different language. And my artwork kind of came out from that, because that's when I kind of saw a bit of a hierarchical change in how you're treated with the language that you speak. So you can be a woman who speaks Urdu, or you can be a woman who speaks my language, and you seem lower, basically. So one of the artworks that I ended up making was this one. And this is an artwork about my language. So the tie that I got there was in the performance piece that I did. And on that tie, it says, ask me a question in Batwari, which is my mother tongue. And it was really weird to walk around the streets of Islamabad with that tie on, with people saying, I don't know what that means, when they knew what it meant. They just decided that they just don't want to because I was a woman and of lower class to them. And this was something I was kind of looking and researching. And when I spoke to these women from Chira, they had that same kind of aspect that people thought less of them. So when I first went into that room with them, I was really worried about speaking Urdu. I was like, listen, women, I don't speak it. And I was speaking in Batwari. And you can see these women, they were dressed in like their best clothes. They had all the gold on to try and show that they were of a higher status than they were, or deemed to be. And when I walked in and I started speaking my language, and I had a translator with me, because I was like, I need someone to talk to them and tell them what I'm doing. And it was so funny, because as soon as I opened my mouth and said the first phrase, they were like, girl, what you on about? We speak your language. You're no better than us, and we're no better than you. So it was a really nice experience with them. And it was great to hear their stories, because all these women were married and they were promised this life of luxury when they were married. And obviously, being from the Asian community, and we had a chat about this before, marriage is a big thing. Women, once you're married, that's when you're allowed to do stuff, then you can explore. Which with these women is what was promised to them. And a lot of these women in this room had really hard marriages. A lot of them weren't successful. A lot of their children were taken away from them. None of them were really seemed to be succeeding in what they wanted to according to society. But speaking to them, these women had started their own businesses. They had beauty salons. They were working with the government to make a change. They were doing protests, which was amazing. And then what I wanted to help them was they were saying that, listen, we don't have the education to kind of build our businesses. And we all know what AI is, right? So we all I was like, well, this is kind of a tool for you guys to use. So they wanted to design a office for themselves. And I was like, well, this is what you can use. And we played around with AI on a computer, and they were designing their offices. And they're like, right, print that out, because we want to send that to our designer, and that's what we're going to do. And it's amazing, because I still have communication with them to this day. And they've sent me some updates on some of the office work that they did from that workshop, which has been amazing. And that's the power of women when you're in a group and you have people who support you and who think the same as you. You can kind of get things done quicker. So from that, what I had seen was a lot of my work has always been about talking about societal taboos for women, giving them a voice if they don't have one, trying to make myself the vessel for them. I don't mind taking the mick out myself to kind of make a voice for everyone else. So this is a photography image that was taken, and it's called A Palace Awaits. So from them conversations with the women in that group, as them having been promised this land of luxury once they get married, that's all it was. It was just a broken promise. So the balloons here represent that kind of future of a palace awaiting. Behind you, the motorbike interprets the groom. But balloons don't last forever, and dreams in marriage, as they said, which was one of their quotes, don't last forever. And you have to have and stand by yourself. So this series was called I Am Mrs. Khan. And the reason for that was the posters behind. So when I was in Islamabad, these posters were all around, and it was a marriage centre. So with this marriage centre, you send your CV, you talk to the person, and they will send you a CV back of a potential groom. And I thought, no, that's not right, because women are powerful. We should be able to make our own decisions. We can be business women. We can make a difference. We can look glamorous. So the idea of the suit was having that Western kind of hierarchical design of being a man, say, as it's seen as gender roles, but then also having the wedding jewellery of having the nut and the earrings, but then also showing that you can be powerful as a woman. And then this was another one of my pieces called I Am Mrs. Khan, which is kind of showing the same kind of story as well, just responding to that marriage centre and how women can be powerful and taking ownership of your own life and who you're meant to be. But yeah, and then this was another one that I did was called Spit and Polish. So in them performances, I made sure I wore the same suits and the same shoes, because a lot of the work that I do, I try to make work out of what I have. So with that one, it was all about how people are perceived. So Spit and Polish is about... Sorry, my mind just went black for a second. But yeah, no, what it's about is the levitation of shoes. So when you're in Pakistan, men are seen as being higher than you, but men are cleaning your shoes as well on the streets. And that was that project, about having one shoe on the floor, but something being levitated by artwork, by certain kind of Western ideologies that make something worth more than it is. But I think from the whole aspect of doing that project and being on that residency was seeing the resilience of women and how women support each other and finding a group that supports you to help you flourish in what you want to do and how you want to be. I'm really honoured as well that my work has been brought on by the Blackburn Museum and is part of the Art Orphan as well. So if you're around, you can go and pop over and have a look. But But yeah, and I think it's really important to kind of make that stand. Like, I know we're in the 21st century and we're in 2025, but a lot of people's mindsets are still from back in the 70s. And I realised that when I was in Islamabad, a lot of my family is still stuck in the 1970s of women not being able to do stuff. But when I went to Islamabad, it's such a changing world. The commissioners are women. There's people, we tend to forget that one of the prime ministers was a woman, and people tend to like overlook that. And it's really important to kind of show that, no, we are and we can do it. And if we stick together, we can kind of rule the world, I think. So yeah. The words of Beyonce, I guess. But yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know to give.
Okay, so let me start with my first one. You have all spoken already about several, I guess, turning points, examples of things that have been particularly significant in your careers, in your lives. But I'd like you to share one specific example, please, from each of you, where you have taken an action or actions that have proved to be pivotal to accelerate your career as an artist. So one example of something that's proved to be pivotal, a real juncture. Who might want to go first?
Me.
Dawinder, you're holding
You're
the
holding
mic.
the mic. So yeah.
I think that, is this working? Yeah. I think that, so when I first started making work, I didn't know I was making it. So what I mean by that is I had just had this tribute I wanted to pay to my late father. I was a producer of immersive theatre at the time, and I was telling other people's stories, and I thought, I want to tell my own. I want to tell my own story that relates to everyone else in the wider context of being British and Asian. And I think at that time, I took that idea to a number of organisations and they all rejected it. And that rejection for me was like, well, stuff this, I'm going to try and find a way to do it. So I sort of rang up loads of people, rang up like all my network, my family, went into the attic, like looked for lots of objects and items that could bring like a pop-up living room to life just by wanting to do it. And I think that was for me, sometimes the first step of like accelerating change in yourself is just by trying something new, even when you haven't got the support of other people. Because I think there's nothing more powerful than being passionate about an idea that you've got and how you express that idea to other people. And I think that was a real changing point for me, because when I did it, and it was really hard work, and I begged, borrowed, but I didn't steal, and it enabled me to think, I can do this. If I want to do something, I actually can do it. It doesn't always take money. It sometimes takes a network of people who you know and you can call upon. So I think that was a change. And I think just following your own nose and your own instinct about a story. For me, it's storytelling. The story comes first. It's like, what's the story here, and why does it matter, and why should people care, and can they see this? Although it's specific to the Asian community, is it relatable to the wider community? Is it relatable to anyone who can understand what this thread of this person is, or this journey that they've been on?
Thank you.
So I think that it's just self-belief, but also, but I do want to say that after I did that pop-up, there were a number of different commissioners who came to see it, and then they just as a punter, really, just to see what was happening. And then they said, so are you an artist now then? And I said, no, I'm just making it. And they just said, no, you're an artist, so we're going to see if we can support you further. And then eventually got a bit of money. And then one of the big things to have happened, which was a really big turning point actually, was being commissioned by the National Festival of Making. And Lauren and Eleanor and Wayne, I presented an idea, and they just gave me the opportunity. And sometimes, and I think women have been my biggest champions actually, and sometimes you do need that. It's what you said. Sometimes you need that belief from other people just to say, you can actually do this. Give yourself that chance and give yourself that opportunity. So I think accelerating change is about the belief, trying something new in yourself, trying to make it happen, and then finding the network to make it happen.
I mean, everything starts here, doesn't it? It starts with us. It can't start outside of us. There can be inspiration. There can be lots of exciting ideas and thoughts, but it has to start here. And I think, you're absolutely right there. Did anyone else want to?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, it's talking about self-belief and having the confidence to do the things that you want to do. And I remember when I was in college, I had the opportunity to work with the Manchester Art Gallery. And I remember going in, feeling very small, feeling like, what is this place, do I fit in this place? What are the artworks? The artworks was a lot of paintings that were owned by upper class, sort of white upper class that donated, that gifted to the gallery, and I remember feeling very overwhelmed, being in that space. And I remember in my final year of college, there was an opportunity presented where I got selected, where that I was able to sort of showcase my work in that environment, which felt very bizarre, and felt like, do I deserve this? Or like, how is my work here like? And, I just felt very overwhelmed, but also very, very grateful that I was able to do that in that space, because growing up in Manchester, that was the only place that I was trying to make sense of what I could be in, where art was celebrated. And yes, there was a lot of paintings that didn't make sense to me because I didn't know the background, but there was a lot of works that I could sort of relate to in my sort of domestic sort of home environments as well. So, and just thinking about where they were and where they came from, and just looking at the sort of artistic sort of perspective of how I can recreate them and things like that. And then I went away to uni, and then when I came back, I got I got the opportunity to work with the gallery. And ever since I've been working with the gallery since then, working with their collections. I've been commissioned as an artist to work with them, looking at what the collection and the archives, what do they mean now? What do they mean for the artists living in Manchester now? How can they be relevant in this time and age? They're from like early 1900s, 1700s, 1500s. So it's about sort of keeping relevant with what's in the archives, and what does it mean to be in Manchester? What does it mean to be, how I want to represent, people of Manchester. And I felt like it's such a big opportunity, and it's such a big responsibility. And I got to create works, and it got exhibited in the Manchester Art Gallery. And now I walk in, I know people, I know staff members. I walk in like it's my second home. So it's that feeling of like, I still look back and I still tell like Emma, who I work with in the learning department, that I remember walking in the first time and feeling very overwhelmed. But now I walk in, I know everyone, I know the collections, I know the people, and I can walk in and I can talk about the things that are in the gallery. And I got to work with students, high school students of Manchester, and I got to give sort of workshops on how to look at artwork and how to create narrative around artwork through your own experiences. To be able to do that is the biggest achievement. I think for me, when I look back, I think it's so meaningful for me, and to create that within my own city, and to be in such a center of it as well. And a lot of people come to that, to the art gallery as well. And for me to be sort of find home in that, and I can go in there, I can sort of, work there, and I have the opportunity to be in that space and sort of give my voice. So yeah, that's sort of, that was sort of my experience. Yes, thank you.
Zara, did you want to add something?
Of course. I've got to agree with Nehal there that you kind of have a bit of imposter syndrome when you kind of apply for stuff or go into a space. Because I remember when I was in uni, I was the only Asian girl on my course, so I had no idea. I felt really uncomfortable. But then when I was there, it was like I found my people and my family, because they understood me in ways that my own family couldn't. So, and I think it's finding them spaces that make you feel like that. But I feel for myself, the kind of push that I took was probably taking that commission and applying for it with the Pakistan one with In Situ and AOST and the British Council. I doubted myself a lot with my artwork, and that's something that's happened with my own family, with not getting the support and thinking I'm not good enough. And then I'm working with artists and I'm like, oh my God, I would do it that way. And getting inspiration from other people and artists working for BCP, you think, wow, these guys have just gone for it, and everyone's gone through the similar thing, so why aren't I taking that push and just doing it for myself? But yeah, taking that commission was one of the main things. And I think as well, working for an art company and surrounding yourself with people who do motivate you and do push you, like Jenny Rutter and Laurie Peake are just amazing. For me, any questions I have, anything I'm unsure about, they will just push me. Being a producer as well was new to me because I was always doing community engagement work or socially engaged practices. And then working with Jackie, who's amazing at the stuff that she does as a producer, has built my confidence in that. So it's your surroundings, but I think my main thing was doing something for myself, and having the courage to kind of do it and ignore all the whispers in the back of my mind. Because I think as creatives, we all have them little whispers in the back where we just kind of doubt ourselves. So trying to, push through that.
Thank you. It's interesting listening to you all, because one of the things that I'd been thinking about in relation to this event today was that, we always talk about raising awareness. You make people aware, you sort of bring them to a point of understanding, and then somehow, we'll sort of trip into the answer. Change will happen. People get it, right? Why wouldn't they? They'll see the sense of it, and suddenly, there'll be momentum and there'll be change, and things will move on. And yet, when we actually think about the sort of the where women are, how far they've come, and you can see that from some of what my colleagues, my friends here have shared. It takes time, and often it takes quite a long time. So there's something for me about this Accelerate Action, and I was sharing this with the panel members around, what do we do to overcome things that are actually long enduring and quite stubborn? Some of these barriers continue to be quite stubborn, and sometimes it feels like we take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. We move forward and then suddenly we're moving back again. You think, hang on a minute, haven't we been here before? Haven't I heard this before? Haven't we done this before? And I'm having to keep doing it again and again. And I guess what I'm really interested in is, how do we actually create change that's purposeful and sustainable? Okay, so it doesn't feel like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's maybe 4 or 5 steps forward and no steps back, perhaps. So I guess my question to you is, how do we create change that is sustainable and that can be a sort of an inspiration to others around us? So how do we inspire that?
Do I have to start because I have the mic?
Why not?
Oh my God. I think what it comes down to is having people there that can represent and are inclusive of all backgrounds. I know as Asian women, we have so many societal norms in the Asian community that you're meant to meet. And then when there isn't anyone who looks at you or represents you, you feel like it's harder to get there. So if there is someone that is similar to your background, you're like, oh, well, they've done it and then I can. So it gives that push. Like my cousins, I was the first one to do an art degree. My cousin's dad literally sat me down because she wanted to do an art degree at UCLan. And he was like asking me all the questions, like, right, I can see you're doing well, so I'll let her do it. So it's when someone takes that first step and you have them maybe to look up to, or just a bit of guidance. I think that's really important when it comes to stuff like that. But it's hard. Being a woman is really bloody hard. It's the hardest thing ever, and we don't take it easy, and we try to get them. Like you said, Fatima, it's like 10 steps forward, 20 steps back in some cases. But I think if you have the motivation and the belief in yourself, which is very hard to have, you can definitely try and get them. Surround yourself with people that you know, communities that you know that will push you and help and guide you to get to where you need to be. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that was all right.
Yes, I think that the point that you said about sort of guidance and sort of, that kind of reminded me of sort of, I think mentorship is very important, mentoring, and sort of having that person with experience, someone you look up to, talk to you and just listen to what you have to say. I think, so one of the things that I like to do is, and I look back at my college days and how I felt at that time applying to universities. You know, I'm doing an art, I'm going to do something that people talk about doesn't have stability, but, you know. And so I work with students at the Manchester College who are going off to university. And I think it's very important because I felt like that would also be important for me to hear what that looks like. Sort of what the challenges are, what the good things are, what kind of hurdles you might have to face. So just talking about my journey with them, talking through my art, the things I create, why I create them, and sort of showing them the different ways of working. There's just not one way of doing things. There's different ways to be in the creative industry and sort of adapt and sort of how to showcase your skills and what you're interested in. So it's, and then again, having one-to-ones with them and really listening to what they have to say and sort of what situation they're in, sort of what they can do for themselves as well. So I think it's very important to sort of, from an early age, having someone to look up to and someone who sort of, they can see they know what they're doing, and sort of hearing from them can give you a lot of sort of motivation, and a sort of, it might just make them sort of help them to, make that step. So yeah. Thank you.
On my way, as you can tell, I'm from Wolverhampton with this accent. On my way here today, I was listening to Radio 4 and Women's Zara, and they were talking about, there's a debate about misogyny and how do we tackle that. And I think what was really interesting, and we were talking about accelerating change, they were talking about the negative impact of Andrew Tate and the impact he's had on young men and women. And what they were talking about is how to create that change, actually, with conversation. And sometimes it takes people from different cultures and communities, and even communities where you don't really expect to find yourself. So what they were talking about was trying to involve tech, schools, community groups, trying to create those communities as well, and trying to get into those communities and have those difficult discussions. So I think accelerating change from that perspective, it's about trying to involve everyone around the table and trying to see if we have a unified... Do we accept that there's a problem, first of all, and then trying to do something about it as a collective. And I thought it was really interesting talking about bringing in the tech and bringing in, different types of people around the table, listening to them and finding out what the issues are to then put them on the table to deal with. And I think sometimes the communities are there to create change, and sometimes you have to be the person to create that community and bring people in. So I think, it's sometimes we're a part of a community and sometimes you have to start one.
That's very powerful. You may want to keep hold of that amongst yourselves. One of the things I call it my day job. So when I'm doing the consultancy work, quite a bit of that is around building common understanding in order to create common purpose. Okay. And I often talk to people about diversity, and we all talk about diversity and how wonderful it is, and how, we can be so much more because of the diversity of those people around us, and we can be participative in that. But the thing I find really interesting about diversity is people don't often talk about how you navigate that, because difference can be hard to navigate. Okay, but it's the effort that you put in can often reflect in the power of what you can create together. Okay, and I absolutely agree. We were talking briefly just before we came up here, and I talked about finding your tribe. Okay, and I'm a firm believer of finding your tribe. The environments that we grow up in, the environments that we've been part of, serve us well, but sometimes don't actually understand us. One or two of my colleagues here have talked about, what's been really helpful and sometimes been less helpful, some of the expectations. But when you find your tribe or your tribe members, they take you for who you are, right? They take you as you are now, okay? And the things that you want to put out into the world. And you're absolutely right. You have to be the change you want to see. Sometimes cliches are cliches because there's a real grain of truth that underpins them, and that's why they resonate with people. And yes, you have to create the change, because it's not always something that's going to be happening that you can step into. And I'm a firm believer that, where there is change happening, we can create momentum around that through connection with other people who are also being purposeful and who have that common understanding with us. So I'd like to, maybe ask you just to consider that. And I'm going to move into, I'm conscious of time, but I'm going to move into my final question for the panel, which is, what more do we need to do, okay, to ensure that all women, particularly those most marginalised, can benefit from the progress that we make?
I think it's making them aware of what's out there for them. And getting to them spaces where they wouldn't know. Coming from a community engagement background, I've been in situations where I've had to go to places where women wouldn't know anything that we do. And you have to take that first step. You have to make yourself vulnerable for them to be comfortable, to be open to you. Just like the women in curated, they wouldn't open up to me unless I did it first. And it's making that comfortable space and then telling them about things and then giving them that confidence so they can drive off your confidence of speaking to them. And then, like I said before, they'll look at you and be like, well, if you've done it, then why can't I? And people generally think, oh, everyone's just like sailing through life, like nothing affects us and nothing bothers us, but we've all got something going on. And when people find people relatable, that's when you can make that change and that push. So I think it's getting yourself into them spaces and making them connections.
Community activism.
Yeah, it is.
Community activism.
It's also making sure that there's someone that represents everyone in any big forum that you do have. Representation is a big thing, no matter what background you have. So that's an important thing that I firmly believe in. If you have someone representing a community, I know it's one of those where we all want to make sure that we all get along with each other and everyone can speak to anyone, but some people won't. They're more comfortable speaking to something that they know, or someone that they know. So yeah, I think that's what I think.
Did you want to add anything, ladies?
I think what I'd like to add is, I think a lot of South Asian artists, from my experience, we all make a lot of work about our heritage and our identity, and then sometimes we're competing for the same commissioning pot because we've got similar ideas, and that's actually a problem. That is a problem, because then if we're going to make work about our identity and heritage, and the reason why I say it's a problem is because I remember pitching an idea to Birmingham Art Gallery. This is quite a few years ago now, and they'd just done something about South Asian youth culture. And then I pitched an idea about my project, and they just said, well, we can't do that now because we did an Asian project last year. So what that told me was that, once someone's done something about South Asian story, our stories are so nuanced as well, they're not all the same. And I think some of it's about getting more understanding of the nuances of the stories from the commissioning side of things. And sometimes it's about artists who have similar types of stories they want to tell to actually join up together, because sometimes Asian women do compete with each other as well. Because, like I said, we're competing for the same pot. Yeah. And sometimes we're telling not exactly the same story, but something around the same thread.
Nehal, did you want to invite?
I would just like to say that I think one way of sort of including women, and I think one thing that will boost their confidence is sort of giving them like leadership roles, maybe, in spaces where there is an underrepresentation of South Asian women. A sort of space where they can sort of showcase their skills and again, that confidence thing where they can sort of take over a space, I think. And that's exactly how I felt about the Manchester Art Gallery, working with them, taking over, being, leading something. And I think that kind of goes a long way. That kind of, then you're like, okay, if I can do this, I can do something else. It just grows from there. I think that one opportunity can take you really far. So I think having leadership roles, giving leadership roles, I think can take you, can give you that sort of.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I do lots of design and delivery of leadership workshops, with groups of people in organisations. And I kind of smile about it, but it's serious in that I sometimes pitch up at places. So I'll have spoken to people in a senior role that take the decision, and then I pitch up to do the delivery. You know, I've done the design with a small group of people, and I come into a room, and there'll be maybe, you know, up to 30 or 40 people. And I am often met with that sort of look that passes across a person's face when they realize I'm the person who's going to be stood at the front of the room with something to share, as though, oh, interesting, you know. And then we sort of get going, and they're like, "Oh yeah, actually, I can see that. Yep, I got a lot from today." But it's almost like they had to get over the idea of who was doing the leading of it. Even now, you know, all these years later, you know, I remember somebody said to me a long while ago. I was doing some work in Malaysia. And it was leadership development with the government department. And this woman said to me, she goes, you know, it's really hard. She said, you know, I'm wanting to be a leader. You know, I've got a leadership role. I've got going, but it's really hard. Nobody sees me as a leader. And I said to her, you know, you live and work in a Muslim environment, an Islamic environment, where women leaders, you know, you look around in Malaysia and there are fantastic female leaders, right, that have really accomplished big change in big roles. And it's not new to them. They've been doing it for a long time. And I looked at her and I said, you know, you try being me in the environment where I work, and actually there are very few people that look like me and actually sound like me and trying to do what I do. So, you know, it can, when I ask the question about sustainable change, you know, it can be hard, but it can be done. And the best way to do it is in connection with other people. You know, that's my point about tribe. You know, find people you connect with, because there's more power in us doing it together than trying to do it alone. You know, and I take your point about competition, but, you know, sometimes the parameters people put around, you need to compete. And then my question is, why? Why do I have to compete? Actually, I think there's probably some common ground here that I can build from. Any questions?
My name's Therese Ward, and I'm an artist. And I think my friend and I were talking about how difficult it is to get out there, really. This week I've just been turned down for DYCP, hooray. And last week I was turned down for an exhibition. I've just applied for a new one, but it's that energy that it takes. I think as an artist, your energy is taken making the work, thinking about the work, researching, and then, you know, you're almost the manufacturer, and then you're the business person, and then you're the marketing person. And that idea of having a space to have your work, to set that off. I mean, I've done it in the past and we've worked on collaborative projects, but, you know, when I got the negative response for funding, then you sort of think, it's the imposter syndrome. What am I bothering? Who wants to see it? It's all that sort of thing. So it's been very inspiring to hear your stories. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I think that's one thing. I think you have to just keep trying and keep pushing and believe in your own work. That's something that I've struggled with for years, and I still struggle with. Trust me, I weren't going to put that into the art open at all. And then I had to have a bit of a push and then put it in. Yeah, very last minute. Jackie was in the office with me and I was like, I think I'm going to go put it in. And then she's like, yeah, just do it, go now. I did win. Thank you. But yeah, that's what I have to say. Just believe in yourself, or surround, like we've always said, the tribe, surrounding yourself with people that believe in you. But if you truly believe that you can make work that either can make a change or make a difference, or even just please yourself, just carry on going. That's what you have to do.
Can I ask you a question? Did you get a fund? Were you working with a fundraiser?
I was wanting development money because I've been ill for some time and I was coming back to making the work. And so I got all my mentors in place and places that I could work with. So it took a long time. It's like writing a degree course, I think, trying to write that funding. But it was just a leg up, really. And I think once you can get that development funding and you can start to learn new skills within your work, then it just puts you on that platform where you can have momentum. It's just taking that step forward to get momentum to have your work out there. But when you're working in isolation, sometimes that feels like a big pit, really, for you to climb out. It sounds very negative, but I'm not a negative person. But it's this first process, really, of trying
if
to
this
do
is the
that.
DYCP, that is very, is it the DYCP? Yeah, that is very competitive.
Yes.
I did manage to get that during lockdown, but it was very competitive. But I would say there's a project that I did that I really wanted to do, and it was a very serious subject about domestic violence within the Asian community. And it was an art project, and it got rejected 4 times. And then when it got rejected 4 times, one of the things that came back was, we think it's too sensitive. And then this was around when Sarah Everard was attacked. And just by that happening, and this was a terrible thing that happened to that lady, the way that I worked with a fundraiser was just a change of a few sentences, and that got me the funding. So what I would say was sometimes it's political. Sometimes things happen in the environment that can actually make a funder realise that this is a needed project. And sometimes it's just about the wording being changed. So my advice actually is to find someone who's a really good fundraiser and just see if they will do some bit of support for you. I don't know if Creative Lancashire can help with that. Can we help? So I would just say, just try and get a bit of support with it and see if someone will give you like a little. Sometimes fundraisers take a little bit out when you finally get the money, so you pay them then. So I think I would say keep going though. I would go again.
And just on that note, I would say that I think it's Arts Lancashire arranging clinics in relation to DYCP funding. Isn't that right, Ed? Together with Creative Lancashire, sorry. So there is a way for you to get some advice and support in terms of how you fill out your application. Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you.
I do.
But I actually worked with you on your first pop-up, but I didn't realise that was your first pop-up. I thought you were like an established artist and like you've done this a million times. I would have never guessed that was your first one.
Well, that one was my 3rd variation, but it was the
Okay.
first time I had like a big major commission. Yeah.
No, it was amazing working with you, honestly. I want to thank all 3 of you for sharing your stories because I resonate with you really, really well. And it just gives me that confidence knowing that there is other people who have got to the top and that I can aspire to. But yeah, my question's for Zara.
Yeah.
You know, when you made your work in Pakistan, while you were taking those pictures, did you get any backlash?
So that's quite interesting. So the anxiety in me before I even stepped out the doors was just killing me a little bit. So I was like, what's everyone going to say? But it was really strange because my mindset was, my family's from a village in Azad, Kashmir, and there you have to wear the headscarf to be fully covered. And I had that in mind when I went out into the streets of Islamabad, not realising that it's such a progressive city. It's changed so much. It's like London in Islamabad. I did get some looks from some people like, what's she doing? But what was really nice was the women were just like putting their hands up like this and like just going like this. And that kind of gave me a bit more of a boost. And that was great because I didn't expect that from them. Normally when you do something like this, you think it's more women who are going to be a bit more judgmental. But no, it was actually all right. There were like a few, and some guy called me Bargirl, which means crazy in our language. But it was more of a positive experience than a negative one. I think I angsted myself up that it's going to be so bad.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. But getting them little nods from females was really good.
Well, that sounds really amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
Hi, before I say anything, I wanted to say Happy Women's Day to every woman in here. Going forward to my questions, I wanted to ask, how is it possible to join, how is it possible to be a part of a community if you do not see people that represent where you're from? For instance, individually, I'm a fashion creative, got a fashion brand, but everybody that is around me as an individual, or I should say as friends, they're not part of like what I'm looking to be. And the people that resonates with you. So to give you a background, from Africa, right? And in my community, we have people who call Igbos. I'm an Igbo. And of course, here in the United Kingdom, it's like there are a lot of people you look at from a distance and you admire. So on a personal level, I would say when I look at Asians, so people from Pakistan, people from Bangladesh, I admire them because of their resilience. And it's like they remind me of where I'm from. They remind me of being an Igbo, but then you're here and you do not see people from your tribe here that share your vision, that are trying to, so you're thinking, how do you become part of a community of people like that you're not part of, if that makes sense? So it's like, my question is, how do you navigate that?
I think there's certain situations where you are uncomfortable and you have to put yourself in them uncomfortable situations to kind of feel like you belong in a sense, or some form of belonging. It's hard, it's not easy. It's very hard, but you just kind of have to have that drive and that passion to kind of put yourself in that space, and then you can be that space, you can be that person, that space that can represent others who are like you. I don't know what you guys think, because it's a...
I think, you know, when I go into a place and I'm the only Asian woman or something, I just think this is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because I've got something
Yeah.
that is going to bring something new or different to the table. I never ever think about it negatively. I never have done. And I think so much of it is about you knowing what your art form is, what your identity is, what you bring to the table, and what value you can bring to people as well. Because when I'm trying to make my artworks, I think, why does someone want to come to this? And it's because it evokes that memory and that emotion in people that we can all sort of get into the living room and have a chat. And that's actually what that piece of work does. It brings people together, and it was meant to do that. So I think, and when you're talking about getting into those connections with the right kind of people, we're in a moment in time in history where we can literally connect with anyone because of social media. So I would say actually really use that to your advantage if you want to get in front of people. Like, I think I went to this conference a few days ago, and they were talking about how it was a director of ASOS, and she was talking about how really small fashion brands are now partnering with massive brands because they're just seen as being so authentic and real about what they're creating and making. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity, but we just have to try and not see things negatively, but look at them in a really positive way of what the opportunities are.
Yeah. I think it's own yourself, celebrate your journey, and just celebrate that.
Do you know when I think my biggest opportunities came for me? When I was more of myself.
Yeah.
When I was more of myself, and I was like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I don't have to pretend to be anything else. And I like wearing a bowler hat. It was all of those types of things. It was just like, well, who are you and what do you bring? And I don't think you can lie about being authentic and being yourself. Like, people just see it straight away.
People will connect with that.
Yeah.
People
And
would want
even
to
if you're
connect with
different,
you.
yeah, people
And
see it.
it's true, it's like the negativity comes from all that angst, fear that maybe you're not, but then if you look at it the way you are, and I'm learning too, so that's something I should be doing, is looking at it in a positive way. Like, yeah, I do own the space, and I should like be proud of what I do, and this is what I do, and show it off. So thanks, Dawinder.
You're welcome. Can I also add a point that, you know, when you feel like that, when you feel like you're sort of on the outside looking in, trying to make the connection, be bold, you know, reach out. If you feel that there's something that you want to do, you know, take an opportunity. So I'll give you a very clear example. I grew up in Blackburn. You know, this is all I knew. I said that at the beginning. And then I moved away to London. And a lot of the work I do is in London, in the southeast, in the home counties down there. And after the pandemic, we decided, my husband and I, that because the Northwest was in lockdown for such a long time, I didn't get to see my family very much at all in that period. So it felt like I was like, although it's no distance at all, because I come up and down on the train like every other week now, because I work there, I work here, I move around. But bought a house up here in Ribchester. So it was the first time I was reconnected. Although I come here all the time, it was always in a hotel or staying with my dad or a family member. And suddenly I had my own home, right? But I said to these guys earlier, all the women that I grew up with, my friends from school, all married and moved away. So although I have family here, I don't have any friendship circle at all. But I knew I wanted to be here, and I knew I wanted to connect into organizations that I was interested in. I didn't quite know how. My sister-in-law, and this is one example, my sister-in-law showed me an advert. My sister-in-law admits she doesn't really understand what I do for a living. Right? When I describe it, she's like, because she doesn't work in a sort of an office environment. You know, she works in the voluntary sector, she works in charities. But she saw an advert with British Textile Biennial for a fundraiser. And she sent it to me and she said, oh, look, there's a job for you. And I thought, I don't do fundraising. I have no idea what that looks like. But I wrote to British Textile Biennial, to the person whose name was a contact for that job, which happened to be Zara. Now, I didn't know Zara, but I wrote to Zara and I said, hello, my name's Fatima Vepari. I'm from this area. I'm really interested in your organisation. I can't do this job, but can you please put me in touch with somebody I could talk to? So she did. She put me in touch with Jenny Rutter. I had a conversation with Jenny, and she was like, can't see how you'd really fit here right now, but let's you and I keep in touch because I think there's going to be an opportunity somewhere. I then did some volunteering for the biennial a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed it. So I was here in the cathedral, I was over at the Corn Exchange, I hosted a couple of events. You know, I did what I think I do well, so I did that hosting, blah, blah. And then Jenny said, let's talk again. I think there might be something in this. So we had another conversation. Again, nothing came of it. And then last year she contacted me and said, you know, we really like your energy. We really like what you're about, what you talk about. And we got a lot from that conversation. Do you want to join our board? So I joined the board of British Textile Biennial. And I said to Zara when I spoke to her earlier this week, I said, if I hadn't emailed you, I wouldn't be here now. So sometimes, you know, you have to just be bold. Take that action. It may not be quite what you think it needs to be, but it could be the making of something later. So don't be put off. Don't be on the outside looking in. So I'm just going to step into this, you know, step into the space, own it, and think, let's see where it goes. And it's not always easy, you know. We'd be lying if we said it was. It's not always easy, but that's where your tribe comes in. Have that group of people that you can call and say, you know, I'm having a rotten day. Can we get a coffee, please? Decaf in my case. But, you know, connect with people. That connection is really powerful.
Hi, I'm Ruth, and I get the pleasure of getting to work with Zara every day. And I just wanted to comment on, with all three of you, it's talking about family and the importance of family. And I just want to kind of say what an inspiration you are, because I think when there are family constraints that aren't just political or social, but I think the strongest ties sometimes are family ties, and they're the strongest ones to counteract and to rebel against. And I think when you've lived a life like that and it's ingrained in you to behave a certain way, to act a certain way, to act out of that is a massive act of rebellion and takes a lot of courage. And then when we're talking about when you don't feel that your tribe is there, I think it's about seeing the similarities in difference. And I think one thing that me and Zara have realised that we've noticed we have quite a shared background, although culturally very different.
And I think we all have some sort of similarities, whether you're white, whether you are brown. My granddad came here and worked in the mills. My neighbour next door, her granddad worked in the mills. They had a connection, they have a similarity there.
I think you're right, and everyone's journey is different. Even if you're from the same culture, same background, you still have a difference in the way that you see the world and the way that you behave in the world. And sometimes it just comes down to the fact that how you've been raised and what values are around you. But I think what I liked about what you were saying was that, you know, you're trying to find those similarities. You're trying to find that unity. Is that correct? Yeah. And I think that's important. And I think there's a film it's a funny film. It's called Shirley Valentine. And Shirley Valentine so you're laughing, it's a brilliant film to watch. And I think it really does highlight the struggle of a woman and how difficult it was at that time. I don't know if any of you have seen Shirley Valentine. Have you seen? No, you should watch Shirley Valentine.
I'll do that tonight.
We should watch it together. It's good to watch in terms of what it was like culturally during the 1980s for a working class white woman who was in this unhappy marriage, and it's just very relatable for any female actually.
Yeah.
Could I just make a comment about Shirley Valentine? One of our featured women for Creative Lancashire this year is Mina Anwar, the actress who came from Accrington, and she's actually starring in the theatre production of Shirley Valentine at the Octagon Theatre in Bolton. So recommend you go and see it.
Can I just add to that? You know, I'm a firm believer in being a good citizen, okay? That you have to play your part. You have to play your part in your community. Hence my need to connect into being back in Blackburn, being around Blackburn and, in the surrounding area. And one of the things that I do say to people is we make more of our difference than we really should. It's easy to focus on the difference, but actually we probably have more in common than on first presentation. I said at the beginning, I'm Asian. You can see that, it's visible, right? It's not like something I can deny. I'm a 5'2" Asian Muslim woman. I'm also a northerner. I'm the child of immigrants. I'm one of many things at any given moment in time. But all of those things are opportunities to connect with other people. And on that note, I'm going to segue into saying a big thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Thank you to my fellow panel members, because without them, you wouldn't have come, right? This is what attracted you. So thank you so much for being here today. Can I also say a really big thank you to Ed? I didn't know Ed until a few weeks ago, and now he feels like I've known him forever, and he's the loveliest man, right? So big up to Ed. Can I also say thank you to Mish, Christina, and everybody else who's made this possible today. And to the D, thank you so much for this wonderful space. So can I thank everybody who's made today happen? And on that note, can I ask you all please to put your hands together for a collective thank you to one another?